God is unfair in this world, where the outcome of one's actions is determined by a roll of a dice. Some people find happiness while others don't. Sayaka thinks that she's part of the second group. The odds are not in her favor yet. In the first scene she enters her office. She works as a property agent. Right away we are convinced that she is part of the second group. Indeed, her boss calls her out as she walks inside and yells at her in front of the whole staff. It seems like she's used to injustices like this in the evening. He walks home where no one is waiting for her. No family, no neighbor in a small comfortable apartment. She eats alone. She's a 30-year-old woman and feels as if life has passed her by. She finds it very simple to explain everything in her life thoroughly, but drifting into sleep, she sees something nearly impossible to explain in a dream. It's snowing outside and she's walking home. When she gets near, she finds a young man collapsed on the pavement, slowly getting covered by snowflakes. She goes near to check on him. There is a chance that he's not even alive in this weather, but once she gets closer, he wakes up and straightens. Yourself. Sayaka, scared by this sudden movement, stumbles and falls. She could be anybody. But once she sees his smile, pure and innocent, she begins to calm herself. The boy gets closer and asks her to pick him up. He's extremely hungry and even half-jokingly assures her that he's a well-raised man. She looks at this boy, completely unknown to her but still trustworthy, asking for a shelter like a stray dog laughing at his silly joke, and she starts to laugh uncontrollably too. As she smiles in her sleep, the dream continues. She's preparing some noodles for him in the kitchen. He takes it in an instant. Not even waiting for it to get softer. This might look clumsy or childish, but in a dream where everything is possible, she says that he makes it look delicious. Stranger Than politely expresses his gratitude and prepares to leave, but as he does so, Sayaka realizes that this unusual visit is near its end and her life is going to get back on its ordinary rails, sadness, and graves on her face. So she decides to stop him, pointing at his dirty hair and offering him to take a shower. The boy takes this as a miracle, some favor from the gods, and cleans himself while Sayaka drifts into sleep watching a TV in the living room. The morning breaks and she's woken up by the smell of breakfast. Thinking that the dream has not ended yet, she opens her eyes, becomes completely conscious and realizes that she's awake. The dream is gone, but there's somebody in her house confused by this alteration of reality. She enters the kitchen and sees the same well-mannered kid making breakfast as he thanks her again for yesterday. She's taken aback by this completely. She checks herself first, then her room, and finally she sees his things stored neatly on a floor in the living room. Yesterday's visit was real. They go on to have breakfast and suddenly sitting in front of him. Smelling the food that he made, a single tear drops from her eye without her even knowing. She hasn't eaten homemade food for a long time. Her mother used to prepare food for her, but it's been a while now. Since she eats food straight from the convenience store, this meal seems normal, but for the first time she feels as if food can heal. So again a sudden sorrow hits her when she sees how this boy is preparing to leave again. She stops him asking where he's going, and after his eloquent silence, she offers him to stay. The reason for this is, of course, the food that she would like to eat again, however her expressions suggest something more. The boy is left without words. His ability to move is taken by this offering. And so Sayaka takes his backpack and drags him back into the kitchen, making tea for him while he just sits there and shocked that this act of kindness could even exist. Then he stands up rapidly and introduces himself to her. His name is Itsuki, but the last name is hideous, so he leaves it a secret. Now only his name is obvious and the rest about him is a complete mystery. She says her name too. And now they can leave the official tone in politeness and start this weird and odd life together in which the dream and reality are strangely intertwined. In the following scene, Itsuki starts working in the garden. Sayaka tries to stop him since it's a heavy job to do, but Itsuki explains that he can't leave it alone, and so Sayaka joins him too. After a short conversation, Sayaka notices a troublesome weed and suggests that they get rid of it. However, Itsuki seems quite educated in this field and tells her to just leave it since it's rare. She turns to get bags from home, but he stops her for a second, afraid to say something, trying to gather himself, and at the end he says it. What if he stays here, for half a year? Sayaka's face shows that she hasn't thought about it at all. Half a year seems like a lot of time, and she should be aware that she will be spending it with a stranger, but to her surprise, she won't. She says that for now it's okay, and she leaves him outside, smiling widely. After a while, she checks the calendar and notices that her birthday is in exactly half a year. She shares this unusual coincidence with him for some reason. She lies about her age and asks how old he is, but he decides to keep this detail as secret as well. Nonetheless, this atypical life continues, and even her coworkers notice the change in her now. She can't wait to go home and her steps taken towards his house become lively. She's finally happy to arrive home. In the next scene, Sayaka walks inside her apartment and gives him 50,000 yen for living expenses and food, but he needs much less than that. The two begin to talk about their finances, which Sayaka has a lot of, and suddenly Itsuki tells her that he will accumulate his own pocket money. He found a job at a convenience store near the station and he has to go now. Before leaving, he tells her that since he'll be working the night shift, they will only see each other during this time, but he'll still prepare her breakfast and lunch every day. Everything's working out well back at her job. People are starting to even look at her differently because of the meals she's carrying that day. She has an overly reactive and difficult client, throwing temper tantrums and pounding at the table. She tries her best to work with him, but it's impossible and her boss takes over. Eventually, this is the first incident in her new life, and it seems like everything's back to normal. She returns home with the same attitude as before, but suddenly she passes Itsuki without noticing him. But Itsuki does notice her. He gets near, and, seeing that she's not well, takes something out of his pocket and gives it to her. It's bath salts, a present for her. Sayaka's mood skyrockets in an instant. It's an ordinary present, but still she continues walking home, energized and happy, gratified by the fact that someone cares for her flashing through time. It's March, and Itsuki calls Sayaka from outside. She drags herself out of the house, and her jaw drops when she sees him standing by 2 bicycles. He says that it's a present, and so they go for a ride. Sayaka tries to know what their destination is, but Itsuki is a man. Secrets. Nonetheless, this is a kind of experience she's never had before, riding through places that she never visited before. Eventually, they reach a meadow. Itsuki suddenly takes out a camera and starts taking pictures of plants there, taking some stems off of the butterbeer plant, since it's growing in the wilds and it's free compared to supermarkets. So Sayaka collects them too, and they prepare them back home. Itsuki seems to be very knowledgeable in the culinary arts, but we can't know where that knowledge is coming from. That day, he starts teaching her how to cook, and eventually that meal is better than any other. It's simple. And all are made out of butter. Sayaka tries everything while Itsuki just watches her express this cascade of emotions. That night, something keeps her awake. She comes out of her room silently and looks at him sleeping in the living room. They are connecting on a level that most people only dream of. However, he's just her roommate, and for some reason this acknowledgement hurts her. In the following scene, she's about to have lunch. When her coworker comes up to her and swiftly takes a small piece of her food, Sayaka feels as if something of great value has been stolen. This is not mere food for her anymore. She's extremely mad, but still fathers herself and goes outside to eat. They're sitting on the bench. She discovers a note saying that only 5 days are left until their next hunt. The note and the word hunt give her joy, so 5 days pass and they go by the river to scavenge some more ingredients. They have to go down a steep hill and Itsuki offers her hand. It's been a long time since they lived together, and this is the first time they are about to hold hands. This realization freezes her for a second, and then she takes his hand. They take a glance at each other, knowing that food is no longer the only medium of their connection. This time they collect long stamen drives and prepare it with pasta back home. As time goes on, she learns a lot about plants and food from him. April comes and they arrive at their next destination. Sayaka gasps from excitement when she sees a meadow full of flowers. They take pictures of dandelions, clover, red clover, and yellow shamrock. Sayaka mentions that she used to make crowns from them in childhood, so she kneels and tries. For a while. It took. He sneaks up to her from behind with a crown already made, puts it on her head and takes a picture of her. Once she turns back, he keeps taking pictures of her as if she were some rare plant that didn't want to be put on camera. They get back by the evening, still talking about the flowery valleys, when suddenly Itsuki mentions that flowers bloom in summer too. She stops her bicycle for a moment and looks at him, asking him and her thoughts not to disappear, not to vanish like a late-night dream. Summer represents his departure from her, but now she wants him to be there next spring too. In the following scene, it's a normal day at her job. She's showing an apartment to a client, nothing unordinary. However, suddenly he tries to get intimate with her. Sayaka pulls back and stops him. When she arrives back in the office, her boss comes into the room. Talking slowly with a judgmental and irritated tone, saying that a certain client said that her communication was terrible and impolite. All eyes are pointed at her when out of nowhere, she decides to fight back. At last she looks up, raises her voice courageously, and calls him out on, never listening to her part of the story. This stumbles him, leaving him speechless, while everyone sighs in relief that finally somebody has stood up against this man. She walks back home, proud of herself that day, stops by a bookstore, and grabs something. In the next scene, after Itsuki goes to work, Sayaka enters her room, takes out the books. Bought and flicks through it. We understand that it's a botanical book full of plants that they encountered or are about to encounter in the future. Everything that's connected to Itsuki seems interesting to her. Then comes May. They are crossing a river when Sayaka notices a cress. She's becoming more and more competent in this matter. She notices something else and runs towards it, but slips on a slippery stone and gets her foot in the water. They go back to the shore and there Itsuki offers her his handkerchief to warm her foot. Sayaka surprised that he has a handkerchief, but he tells her that it's a gift from his coworker. He turns back to Washington. Something in the water leaving her drawn in her thoughts. It's most likely from a girl, there's no denying that. And for the first time she feels jealous that day. When Ezekiel leaves, she takes the handkerchief from her shoe and puts it in the washing machine. She reads her book in solitude or just watches it since her thoughts are not letting her concentrate on anything. Eventually the thoughts win and she goes out looking for his store. At last she sees him working alone, but suddenly a coworker comes into sight. They seem to be quite fond of each other. This picture hurts her eyes, but she doesn't go back. She walks inside and is greeted by Itsuki, who doesn't notice her but still says welcome. She hides away and observes this girl. Itsuki comes up to her, and we understand that his last name is Kasake. He goes into a storage room and looks back at her warmly. Suddenly she looks over to Sayaka too. For a moment their eyes meet and Sayaka turns back, swiftly trying to get to the door as soon as possible. Itsuki cuts her off and stands by the doorway. They stare at each other for a moment, but Cascade fails to come up with words, so she leaves, running to her home, feeling betrayed. He's much more intimate with the girl he works with than with her who's sheltered. Itsuki catches up and tries to understand why she's here at this time, but Sayaka's mad when she tells him why Itsuki manages to justify it. They have to share that kind of information at work. After these words, the disagreement is over. He leaves his bicycle for her to get back home and tells her that he won't be able to work if she doesn't go home safely. This must be proof that Sayaka is much more valuable in his eyes. But riding back home, she's still contradicted. Feeling guilty and mad at the same time, she still doesn't know anything about this man. The next day, while eating her lunch, she's staring into the air. Still thinking about yesterday, her coworker asks if she's going drinking with them after work. Sayaka hesitates a little, but eventually she agrees. In the next scene, they are all at the restaurant. She tries the food and realizes that her standards for food are much higher than anybody else's at night. One of the co-workers is trying to walk her back home, but Sayaka is refusing constantly and fending off his every attempt as if she were taken. But the man makes up a story and tells her that his friend resides near her house, so he tags along. When they come out of the subway station, Sayaka notices that they just passed Itsuki. She turns back and Itsuki looks at her for a while. Then his gaze shifts to the man and he approaches him, asking Sayaka who he is. He doesn't buy this made-up story either, and shoots a dominating look at him and eventually tells him to go by taxi. And so after he leaves, they go home quietly, knowing that something's wrong between them and that they have to talk it through. Itsuki goes to the kitchen right away and starts doing the dishes. He makes some remarks, calling for an argument and disagreement, and so the disagreement comes. They argue about the man at first, but soon the handkerchief is mentioned too. Both think that the other has no right to speak or to be jealous. That's because they both like each other. They are both angry that despite their feelings, the other is holding back, spending time and resources on someone else. But only one of them is drunk. So Sayaka tells him that only she has the right to speak because she is the one who likes him. Itsuki has struck. He just stands there with his eyes wide open while Sayaka continues explaining her actions from the other night. Finally, she apologizes and says that they are only roommates. She goes to her room, takes off her jacket, and realizes that she must make it right, so she goes back. Itsuki is still standing, dumbfounded. Sayaka explains herself. She is drunk, and this is the only reason she's saying this. So it took. You should forget about it. But these words prove to be a trigger. Itsuki explodes. She can't just plan a bomb like this and then ask him to forget it, especially when he's been trying so hard for so long to repress those feelings toward her. So there it is. They both like each other, and after Sayaka asks for the reason for this repression, Itsuki decides to do something long overdue to eliminate the distance between them. He kisses her, and now she's the dumbfounded one. They wake up in the same bed the next morning. They go under the blankets and express their feelings once more, making sure that yesterday wasn't a dream. That day they kissed goodbye rather than nod politely at each other, and Sayaka runs to her work out of excitement. She's sure that they'll spend the summer together and then countless other summers that will follow. So June comes in her office. Sayaka discovers a ticket for an exhibition of a famous Ikebana artist. This is an opportunity for them to finally go somewhere as a couple. So she takes two of them home and shows them to Itsuki. But Itsuki passes. He only likes plants that grow in the ground. He says. Sorry, but going to his night job. He doesn't realize that it took. You just wanted an ordinary date flashing through time. It's already August. Itsuki calls Sayaka from the garden and shows her the flowers of the skunk vine, the plant that they decided to spare and not get rid of. And so they pass the time and talk about this seemingly ordinary thing outside. The calendar shows that only 7 days are remaining till her birthday, the 15th of August, the day when Itsuki should leave her apartment. According to their arrangement, 7 days go quickly. It's her birthday, and instead of happiness, suddenly she remembers that agreement and gets nervous. She rushes back home that day and is even more terrified when she sees no light in the house. She walks inside warily looking for Itsuki, but he's nowhere to be found. His things are still in the living room, but there's no sign of him. Sayaka turns around to check the kitchen and sees a birthday cake. She gets closer to it, thinking that maybe this is the last piece of food he ever made for her, but suddenly lights are on and Itsuki is behind her, wishing her a happy birthday. Sayaka needs some time to sink this in and feel extremely joyful lighting the candles. He sings to her, congratulates her once more, and Sayaka makes a wish. After they slice the cake, Itsuki gives her another present, a new illustrated botanical book. Itsuki says that he was happy to see her excited about plants, and since her birthday comes once a year an expensive present like this is allowed, so Sayaka checks the waters and says that for his birthday he should wait for something he will love to it. Tusky only says that it's not necessary, so the initial plan is forgotten and they will continue living together for the countless summers to come. The next day, after enjoying her meal and receiving compliments from her coworkers during lunch, she gets home. The place is quiet for some reason. She calls for Itsuki just like yesterday. No one is answering this time. Sayaka goes into the kitchen first and sees a notebook and an envelope lying on the table. She opens the envelope and reads a note saying thank you. Filled with fear, she looks around and walks towards the living room, only to discover that he's gone. She runs around the house shouting his name, but it's empty. There are photos of her in the envelope and notes about gardening in the notebook. It seems like these are his last presents, but Sayaka doesn't want to believe that. She runs out of the house and goes into his store and looks for him there. Suddenly she sees a uniform. Outside the store, it looks like him, so she rushes outside, only to discover that it's somebody else, a new employee. This boy tells her that Itsuki quit 2 days ago, and the girl he was working with left months ago. Sayaka believes that at least she might give her some insight into where Itsuki went, so she pleads and begs for her number, but to no avail. She goes back home in the rain, walking beside her bicycle, drowning in sorrow. Back in her home, the sight of Itsuki's presence doubles her heartache, and so she cries her heart out over the table, full of pictures of herself being happy the next day in the office. She has to eat food from the market, but that's not what makes her sad. She's sitting there looking at the air when her coworker, who always tries to flirt with her, asks what happened to the meal she used to carry. She just says that cooking became rather boring, so she's taking a rest from it. The man states that it's okay, since she always ate food from convenience stores anyway. If anything, she's returned to normal again and she realizes that it's true. Everything's back to normal. But there's only one exception. Thanks to the time spent with Itsuki, she now knows what happy days are made of. She should learn how to spend her life like this all over again. How to cope with the lifestyle of a loner. But one day she sees Itsuki's coworker in the subway and follows her. Suddenly her phone rings and Sayaka overhears a conversation between her and someone. They arrange a date for next Wednesday at 7 p.m. She follows her that day, too afraid that she'll see Itsuki meeting this girl. But suddenly she enters the police station and tells the officer that a woman has been following her. She points to Sayaka and in the next scene she has to explain herself in front of the officer. She continues to deny everything, but when the policeman presents enough evidence, she breaks and tells him that she's looking for a person. She explains her actions truthfully and sincerely. Emotions win her over. She starts sobbing but keeps on talking to him. She doesn't cry from fear of the law, but because this is the first time she's saying this out loud. Eventually the officer gives her a warning and calls her mother. Sayaka pleads with him not to do it since her mother got remarried and she doesn't want to trouble her new family, but to no avail. In the next scene, her mother comes by the police station and they go home. The first thing that her mother is worried about is the mess in her house and Sayaka tells her that it's fine, everything's okay. And that the house is not usually this messy. It's like she's talking more about herself and the chaos in her life than about her apartment. Suddenly, as if she found herself guilty of this, her mother takes her hand, apologizes to her, and invites her to spend New Year's Eve with them. In the following scene, she's having lunch with her coworker. He tries to start a conversation somehow, but everything reminds Sayaka of Itsuki. A coworker asks her what kind of food she likes, and so she starts telling him the names of the dishes that Itsuki made, as if she remembers all of them in detail. Finally, after making sure that she's free, she asks her politely to go out with him. Sayaka apologizes at first and then takes an unusually long pause. Pictures from the time spent with Itsuki conquered her mind, and eventually she says that there's somebody that she liked. Tears come drifting down, her face overwhelmed by confusion. The man tries to make her laugh. He starts sobbing, saying that he should be the one who cries here, and that this makes her laugh too. February comes. She goes outside in her garden, sees a skunk vine, and remembers the time they first started to care for this garden. Suddenly, an idea sparks inside her head. She goes to the same meadow where they first gathered their food and finds the butterbeer plant. She makes the same dish back in her apartment, finally deciding to embrace what Itsuki has given her. She visits the same places, prepares the same dishes, and spends his life as if he were still by her side. Sayaka has come. She's finally over Itsuki's departure, because deep down she knows that they are meant for each other and that they will see each other again. One day, August comes again. There's someone at her door to deliver a package. She receives it and freezes in place when she discovers that it's from Itsuki. Then she rushes to the kitchen, opens it, and sees yet another botanical book. She looks at it closely and is even more surprised when she sees his name on the cover. She reads about this book on the internet and finds that there's a release party today at 2 o'clock. She has only half an hour, so she prepares hastily and runs outside. She enters the building and overhears conversations regarding Itsuki. It seems like he is the son of a very famous ikebana artist, the one whose exhibition he refused to go to in the past. Then she enters the hall and amongst the crowd she sees Itsuki, well dressed, talking to some people. Everything, including Sayaka's heartbeat, slows down. She takes one step forward, but stops when some girl approaches him before she can recollect the courage to go up to him. It took his call to make a speech, so he ascends the stage. What he is about to say will change Sayaka's whole perspective on the past. Itsuki says that everybody expected him to follow his father's path and he thought about it too. However, he discovered that it wasn't what he wanted to do. He ran away from his house, went astray without any destination, and while working a part-time job he discovered his path. Now he is grateful for that period in her life because it allowed him to believe in himself once more. Hearing these words, Sayaka, overwhelmed by all this information, just leaves the building. Slowly walking through streets and recognizing plants, Sayaka understands that one should teach another person the name of a flower if he or she intends to break up with them. Flowers bloom every year, and Sayaka knows that every time she sees one, it will remind her of the time she spent with Itsuki. She finally gets closer to her home, but she feels that something's not right. She turns back and finds him again, sitting on the pavement once more. Just like in the past. He forces himself to smile and asks her where she went. But that's Sayaka's line. Itsuki wants to talk about it but not here. And so they ride their bicycles once more and go by the river. In the following scene they are at the shore but Itsuki is silent. Sayaka briefly tells him about the time he spent alone. Sadly he left and sadly they can't be together, but she's still happy for him and how everything turned out. Finally she compliments his speech and now it's like he begins to talk. He asks her if she listened to his speech till the end. It seems like the speech wasn't over yet and now he will fill in the gaps for Sayaka himself. He goes forward and starts reciting the last of his speech. Mentioning Sayaka and her hospitality, her warmth, her purity and her vulnerability, she helped him immensely in his journey, made him happy and made him realize that he wanted to be with her forever. But first he had to work on himself, face his past and make himself worthy of spending the rest of his life with her. So Itsuki asks Sayaka to take him back. The man who loves weeds to an extreme. Sayaka repeats the words once spoken to him. There's no weed without a name, and hearing this, it's like he gets closer to kiss her and embrace her. And so now their life together starts and Sayaka can state confidently that the lunch she's bringing to work was made by her husband. Please subscribe Movie Recaps Express.